Hello students, this is your English channel, the Unforced English 721. Today I am going to explain the story Hearts and Hands by O. Henry. First of all, we have to read the box 1 before the chapter. I hope students you open your books so that you can understand line by line explanation. I am reading the box 1 first of all. William Sidney Porter was an American writer who wrote under the pen name O. Henry. Pen name means assuming name. Okay. His short stories are well known for their ready wit. Ready wit means for their intelligence, gentle humor, and surprise ending. His story, Hearts and Hands, describes the chance encounter. Chance encounter means meet by chance on a train between two acquaintances. Acquaintances means known, means two people known each other. Miss Fairchild and Mr. Easton. Who were the acquaintances? Miss Fairchild and Mr. Easton. The situation turns awkward when Miss Fairchild notices that Easton is handcuffed to a grim-looking man. Grim-looking means serious-looking. The man intervenes to save Easton from embarrassment and prevent the girl from discovering the truth about him. Intervenes means here come middle, in the middle. The man come in middle between them, between Miss Fairchild and Easton, to save Easton from the embarrassment and prevent him from disclosing the truth of Mr. Easton. It is only through the observations of their fellow passengers that the reader is made aware of the real nature of the relationship between the two men handcuffed to each other. Means the poet only revealed the truth through the observations of their fellow passengers. Two people are sitting beside them, means in that same coach, and they through their observation the poet revealed the truth that who was the marshal and who was the criminal. Okay, now come to the story. At Denver is in USA. At Denver, there was an influx of passengers. Influx means large number of passengers into the coaches on the eastbound B&M Express. B&M Express is that express name. Okay, so there was a large number of passengers in that coach of eastbound B&M Express. In one coach there sat a very pretty young woman dressed in elegant means elegant taste and surrounded by all the luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler. Means she had everything which one she needed that time when she was traveling, and all are expensive. Among the newcomers were two young men, one of handsome presence with a bold, here bold means confident, frank countenance means a face, frank face, actually frank countenance and manner. The other are ruffled means disarranged, Ruffled means disarranged. Ruffled, glum faced person. Glum faced means sad faced person. Okay. Mm. Heavily built. Heavily built means stout. Okay. He was stout in physique. And roughly dressed, and the dress was not neat and clean. The two were handcuffed together. Okay, the two men were handcuffed together. As they passed down the aisle, aisle means the narrow place or passage between row of seats of the train. Aisle of the coach, the only vacant seat means the empty seat offered was a reversed one facing the attractive young women. Means the only seat was there opposite of that young lady. They means the two men had to sit there. Here the linked couple seated themselves. There they seated themselves. The young women's glance means her sight means eyesight. Glance fell upon them with a distant, swift disinterest. Then, with a lovely smile brightening her countenance, and a tender means here affectionate, pink tinging means colored, pink tinging her rounded cheeks. Means when the two men entered that coach and they seated in front of Miss Fairchild, that young lady. First of all, Miss Fairchild couldn't notice them, and she was disinterested. But suddenly, with a lovely smile, her face brightened, and with a tender pink tinging smiling her rounded cheeks, with her rounded cheeks. Actually, her countenance and the tender pink tinging her rounded cheeks means that she was feeling affectionate, and some pink colored means her cheeks were turned pink whenever she recognized one of that man. She held out a little grey gloves hand, and she held out means spread out. When she spoke, her voice full, sweet, and deliberate. Deliberate means intentionally, you can tell, or intentionally, and proclaimed. Proclaimed means indicated that its owner was accustomed to speak and be heard. Means she was confident totally that whenever she spoke, anybody could give attention, because she was looking nice and confident. And whenever she start speaking, that time she whenever she started speaking, people would give attention to her, because for her attractiveness. Accustomed means habituated. Okay. Then, well, Mr. Easton, if you will make me speak fast, I suppose I must. Don't you ever recognize old friends when you meet them in the West? Here, West means west part of the country. And suppose means think. I suppose means I think I must. Here, Miss Fairchild told Mr. Easton that if you will make me speak fast. Miss Fairchild thought that Mr. Easton couldn't want to recognize Miss Fairchild, or he wanted to make Miss Fairchild speak fast. So she was telling that one, that I suppose I must. Don't you ever recognize old friends? Actually, Miss Fairchild was thinking that Mr. Easton might not recognize her, or he wanted wanted that Miss Fairchild will Miss Fairchild would talk fast to him. The younger man roused himself. Roused means here got up means teared up, means he was in he was shocked that he had to go to the jail, and he was in he was spellbounded, and he was thinking, he was sad, he was thinking about his future, that he had to go to the jail for 7 years actually. So whenever Miss Fairchild start talking with him, the young man means Mr. Easton roused means got up himself sharply. Okay, sharply means suddenly, at the sound of her voice, seemed to struggle with a slight embarrassment. Actually, he couldn't expect Miss Fairchild there in front of them in that position when he was handcuffed with the marshal. So he seemed to struggle with a slight embarrassment. He was embarrassed. He was feeling awkward when Miss Fairchild called him. But there is no option. She was that time in front of him, and Mr. Easton had to talk with her in that position. There was no another choice. So which he threw off instantly. Means struggle with a slight embarrassment, which he threw off instantly, and then clasped her fingers with his left hand. Means the young man roused himself sharply at the sound of her voice, seemed to struggle with a slight embarrassment, which he threw off instantly, and then clasped her fingers with her left hand. Clasped means grab tightly her fingers for shaking hand. Then what happened? It's Miss Fairchild, he said with a smile. I will ask you to excuse the other hand. It's otherwise engaged just at present. Here otherwise means it's engaged. If it was not engaged, he could spread out or offered his right hand to Miss Fairchild, but unfortunately it was engaged. That's why he wanted to excuse him for his left hand. That's why he told this one. Then come to the next page. That one, he slightly raised his right hand. Means after telling that one, to make her understand that Mr. Easton's right hand was not free, so he slightly raised means it he slightly pick up his right hand, bound at the wrist. It was bound at the wrist by the shining bracelet. Here shining bracelet means the handcuff to the left one of his companions. Means Mr. Easton's right hand was bound to the left hand of the marshal, means of his companion. That one is marshal. The glad look in the girl's eyes slowly changed. Miss Fairchild was glad after recognizing Mr. Easton, and but whenever she noticed that Mr. Easton's hand was handcuffed, and she means her glad look suddenly gone and changed in a bewildered horror. Bewildered means puzzled, means she was puzzled, she was means she was totally shocked to see that Mr. Easton was handcuffed. The glow faded from her cheeks, her lips parted in a vague means here that uncertain, means uncertain and relaxing distress, means she was in anxiety. She was feeling bad whenever she noticed that Mr. Easton's hand was locked. Easton, with a little laugh, as if amused. Amused means laughing. Mr. Easton understood everything, that why did she means embarrassed, and why did she totally shocked that time after seeing this type of condition when Mr. Easton was handcuffed. So Mr. Easton, with a little laugh, as if amused, was about to speak again when the other forestalled him. When the other means here, other is Mr. Other is the marshal. Marshal forestalled means that means forestalled means obstructed them means stop them when the other forestalled him. The glum-faced man had been watching the girl's countenance, means the glum-faced man means the marshal. He was watching that girl's countenance, means face, with veiled glances. Veiled means side glance, means covered, means he was means secretly he was watching the girl's face from his keen shrewd eyes. Keen means careful, or keen means eagerly. Shrewd eyes means clever eyes. You will excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you are acquainted with the marshal here. Now the glum-faced man started talking, and he told Miss Fairchild that, excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you are acquainted means familiar with the marshal. Means the glum-faced man pretended that he was the criminal and Mr. Easton was the marshal, the police officer. If you will ask him to speak a word for me when we get to the pen, he will do it, and it will make things easier for me there. And then the glum-faced man, who was the actual marshal, pretended that he was the criminal and asked Mr. Fairchild to ask something to Mr. Easton, to speak a word for the glum-faced man when they got to the pen. Pen means here the jail. Okay. He will do it and it will make things easier for me there. Marshal was pretending that he was a criminal and Mr. Easton was the marshal. And after telling that he is taking me to Leavenworth prison. Leavenworth prison means the marshal was telling to Miss Fairchild that that the Mr. Easton was taking him to the prison of Leavenworth, which one is a village in Washington. Okay, it's 7 years for counterfeiting, and he was telling that the marshal was telling, pretending that he was the criminal, and he was taken by Mr. Easton for counterfeiting. Counterfeiting means Marshall was sent to the jail for printing fake currency note. "Oh," said the girl with a deep breath and returning color. Now Miss Fairchild feeling a relief after understanding that Mr. Easton was the marshal and the marshal was the criminal. After convincing by the marshal, actually it was fake, it was wrong, marshal was telling wrong. To prevent Mr. Easton from the girl, to prevent from embarrassment. "So that is what you are doing out here? So that is what are you doing here? A marshal?" Miss Fairchild was totally shocked after knowing that Mr. Easton was the marshal. "My dear Miss Fairchild," said Easton calmly. Now Mr. Easton understand everything, that Mr. Marshall is pretending that he is the criminal, and Mr. Easton, after understanding everything, he also was pretending that okay, and he was also playing the role of marshal, and he was telling, "I had to do something. I had to do something means I had to do something for living, for earning money. Money has a way of taking wins unto itself." This phrase have some meaning, students. You have to understand. Money has a way of taking wins unto itself states that the money never stays with a single person. It keeps on moving from one person to another. That makes it feel that it has grown some wings and is flying out of the hand with no control. Okay, and you know, it takes money to keep step with our crowd in Washington. Washington is a state in USA. There is another phrase, there is another meaning of this phrase. That one is to keep step with our crowd means that in Washington money is required to have a luxurious life, and the lives in Washington were expensive. These words by Mr. Easton means that their friends in Washington were very rich, and as he did not have that much money, he was not fitted to be in their crowd. I saw this opening in the West, and well, a marshalship isn't quite a high position as that of ambassador. Ambassador is who is representing the country. He is called ambassador. Mr. Easton is telling about the ambassador. Who is the ambassador? Maybe the ambassador was the suitor of Miss Fairchild. Now Miss Fairchild is telling what? See, students, The ambassador, said the girl warmly, doesn't call any more. Means the ambassador doesn't call her anymore. He needed ever have done so. You ought to know. You ought to know means you know about that. Miss Fairchild was telling Mr. Easton that you know about that. And so now you are one of these dashing Western heroes, and you ride and shoot and go into all kinds of dangers. That's different. That's different from the Washington life. You have been missed from the old crowd. Now Miss Fairchild was praising Mr. Easton that, and she liked Mr. Easton uh, previously, but whenever she knew that Mr. Easton was a marshal, and after knowing that one, after knowing that one, Miss Fairchild was totally impressed by Mr. Easton, and he was totally feeling means she was feeling totally romantic, and she was totally passionate about the life of a marshal, and so she was praising him too much. The girl's eyes, fascinated, went back, widening a little to rest upon the glittering handcuff. And after telling that, suddenly her eyes widening a little to the glittering handcuff. And then, don't you worry about them, miss, said the other man. All marshals handcuff themselves to their passengers to keep them from getting away. Mr. Easton knows his business. Now the marshal was started telling about he was trying to make her normal by telling that don't worry about that handcuff. All the marshal always handcuff themselves to their criminal to keep them from running away. So Mr. Easton knows his business. Mr. Easton knows his duty. Marshal was telling, the real Marshal was telling, will we see you again soon in Washington? Asked the girl. Then Miss Fairchild again asked Mr. Easton that will we see you again soon in Washington? Not soon, I think, said Easton. My butterfly days are over, I fear. Here butterfly days means the good days. Actually, really his butterfly days were over because he was going to the jail and for counterfeiting. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly. The girl, Miss Fairchild, was telling that he loved the West. He loved the West, and irrelevantly means not connected to something. Means without any style. Normally, she loved the West. Her eyes were shining softly whenever, means when she told this line, her eyes was shining. She looked away out the car window. She began to speak truly and simply without the gloss means superficial attractive appearance what ever she had that time, and manner, style and manner. Mama and I spent the summer in Denver. She went home a week ago because father was slightly ill. I could live and be happy in the West. I think the air here agree with me. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. She was uh, she was giving some signal to Mr. Easton that she was she liked him, and she was telling that her mama was not there, and she and Miss Fairchild spent the summer in Denver, and her mama went home a week ago because her father was sick, and he could live and be happy in the West. And also the means he liked West, and that's why she was telling that I think the air here agrees with me. Okay, means he liked the weather of the West, or the West is means familiar to her that time, or she liked the environment or the everything in West. Say Mr. Marshall uh, growled, means now Mr. Marshall again interrupt them, and growled means roughly and angrily. Mr. Marshall said, the glum-faced man, this isn't quite fair. I am needing a drink and haven't had a smoke all day. Haven't you talked long enough? Take me in the smoker now, won't you? I'm half dead for a pipe. Now real Marshall was interrupted them because he understood that Miss Fairchild Miss Fairchild liked Mr. Easton after knowing that Mr. Easton was a Marshall, and so the real Marshall interrupted Miss Fairchild, and he was telling these lines. The bound traveler rose to their feet. Bound traveler means Mr. Easton and the real Marshall uh, rose to their feet. Easton with the same slow smile on his face, but Easton was pretending as a Marshall, and he had the smile in his face. And I can't deny a petition. Petition means here request for tobacco. The Mr. Easton was telling. He said lightly. It's the one friend of the unfortunate. Means Mr. Easton was telling. It's the one friend means the smoking is the one friend of the unfortunate. Unfortunate means who was going to the jail. He was unfortunate means the Marshall. He couldn't deny that petition for tobacco. Goodbye, Miss Fairchild. Duty calls, Means he was pretending that I am the Marshall and I am going with him for his tobacco, and it's his duty. He had to go, and he held out his hand for a farewell. Now again he held out his left hand because his right hand was handcuffed with Marshall's left hand. It's too bad you are not going east, she said, reclothing herself. Reclothing herself means she was trying to adjusting her dress, reclothing herself with manner and style. But you must go on to Leavenworth, I suppose. Means she was requesting him. Yes, said Easton, I must go on to Leavenworth. The two men settled down. Settled down means walk down the aisle into the smoker. The two passengers in a seat nearby had heard most of the conversation. In that moment, another passengers were there. Among them, there was two passengers. They were hearing them, and said one of them that Marshall's a good sort of chap. Short means type of chap means type of man, good man. Some of these Western fellows are all right. Pretty young to hold an office like that, isn't he? Asked the other. the means the passengers, one of the passengers was thinking that the Mr. Easton same to same like Miss Fairchild, and he was also thinking that Mr. Easton was the marshal, and he was praising Mr. Easton that in his young age he was a marshal, and so he was telling that he pretty young to hold an office like that. But the another passenger was telling, young, exclaimed the first speaker, and the another passenger shocked, and he was asking why. Oh, didn't you catch on? Means he was telling he couldn't understand. Say, did you ever know an officer to handcuff the prisoner to his right hand? Means he was revealing the truth. The poet is revealing the truth that Easton is the prisoner who is going to live in the jail. So the marshal, the real marshal was that one, not that Easton. And because why? They understand by that by they are handcuffed. Easton is the criminal, and his right hand was handcuffed with the marshal left hand. Okay, so that is the last surprise of the story, that who was the real marshal, and the author reveals the reality, that the marshal pretends that he is the criminal and the Easton is the marshal. Okay, that's all students. I hope you understand the story thoroughly. I am explaining, means I already tried, I have explained, I think I have explained properly, and I hope students you have understood totally. If there is any comment or if there is any question, you can write in the comment box, and if you find this video is helpful for you for understanding the total story, then subscribe my channel and hit the like button. And that's all for today. We will meet again in my next video. So good night.